Hi everybody, I'm Sarah Ockwell-Smith. Welcome to my latest SOS parenting video. Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about consequences and how to use them mindfully and gently with your discipline. So there's an awful lot of confusion about consequences, and I think that if you're not careful, actually the way that many advise using consequences could actually very quickly slip into being punishment, which is a very, very ineffective form of discipline. So there are three types of consequences: natural consequences, logical consequences, and illogical consequences. Let's start with illogical consequences. So an illogical consequence is a punishment, basically. It's a threat. It's if your child does something you don't like and you threaten them with something, or you do something entirely unrelated. So for instance, let's say your child has touched something they shouldn't and they've broken it. And your response is to say, you're not going to your friend's house tomorrow. I'm cancelling your birthday party. You can't have the cake that's in the cupboard. I'm telling Santa. There's no logical link between the child's behaviour and the consequence that you're trying to impose. So we call them an illogical consequence, because the punishment, the consequence, is entirely illogical. And it's also a very, very poor educational tool. Basically, it teaches the child nothing about their behaviour, nothing about how they could behave differently. There's absolutely zero link between the consequence and the behaviour. So it's totally illogical and absolutely best to be avoided. A natural consequence is what happens naturally without any input from you. So for instance, the natural consequence of a child who is sitting at a table and throws their food on the floor is that their food is now on the floor. The natural consequence of a child touching something that is hot is that they get burnt, is that it hurts. So that it doesn't require any input from you at all. If you find yourself thinking, what is the logical consequence of this? If you find yourself asking what's the natural consequence of this, then it isn't a natural consequence. It's so important to understand that a natural consequence has no input from you. You don't have to decide what it is. You don't have to apply it. If you find yourself thinking, what is the natural consequence? How do I apply a natural consequence? Then it's not a natural consequence. It happens entirely naturally. In fact, the only input parents and carers have in natural consequences is stopping them from happening. So for instance, the natural consequence of a child touching the fire is that they get burned. So as parents, as carers, we want to prevent the natural consequence. The natural consequence of a child going outside when it's pouring with rain without a coat or an umbrella is that they get wet. So we may want to prevent that from happening. But so important to understand, if you find yourself thinking, what's the consequence for this? What should I be doing as a natural consequence? Then it's not a natural consequence. And natural consequences apply from birth. You know, it's how we all learn. But more importantly, when children are young, a parent and carer's role is to prevent any dangerous or unpleasant outcomes from a natural consequence. So the final type of consequence to talk about is a logical consequence. Now this is, I think, parents get very, very confused between a logical and a natural consequence. A logical consequence is something that's chosen by the parents and the carers, and preferably actually with the child's input as well. And there must be a link between the child's behaviour and the consequence. So for instance, if a child has broken something, the logical consequence is either that they fix it, or if they have pocket money, that they could put that money towards buying a new one. The logical consequence of them, say, tipping a box of cereal all over the floor is that they need to tidy it up. So there's a very, very strong link between the child's action and the consequence. However, it's really important to understand that logical consequences are only appropriate in older children who have a level of brain development that means they understand logical thinking. They understand that the link between their action and their behaviour. They understand how this logical consequence is helping them to learn and resolve the issue. And I wouldn't use them in children under 7 years of age. So a logical consequence only suitable for a child that has logical thought processes, 7 years of age and older, not younger. If you use a logical consequence with a younger child, what you actually end up doing is punishing them, because they don't have the brain development in order to really understand what's happening, and effectively you're just punishing them. Remember, a logical consequence is not a natural consequence. They're very, very different. And the last thing that I want to say is that A lot of people seem to think that gentle parenting and gentle discipline in particular is all about consequences. It really, really isn't. There's very much an overemphasis on consequences when I sort of look at online discussion groups and so on. But consequences are a really, really, really tiny form of gentle discipline, effective discipline. They're only suitable for older children because we're talking about logical consequences. And they really, really miss the main ethos of gentle discipline, which is, why is the child doing this? That investigative work. Why are they acting this way? What needs aren't being met? What do I need to teach them? Do they really understand? Do they know how to behave differently? Consequences don't do any of that. And the other thing is, consequences don't even really keep kids safe in the moment. If you see my toddler tantrum video on YouTube, I talk about how to handle things in the moment, and a consequence doesn't really do that either. Really important, actually, quick thing to add about logical consequences: that consequence must happen really, really quickly after the behaviour. There's no point a child doing something in the morning and you setting a consequence that evening or the next day. It has to be pretty immediate. But anyway, consequences really, really, really tiny, teeny part of gentle parenting and gentle discipline. I really don't use them very often. Focus much more instead on what is the cause of the behaviour, what unmet needs does your child have, what education do they need, what role modelling do you need to do, what teaching do you need to do, and how to keep them and other people safe in the future. Please don't focus on consequences and mistaken them for the way to handle behaviour gently and mindfully, because that's not the case. Teeny, tiny part of discipline. But I hope that's helped to understand the difference between the three of them. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.